The gallery existed in a hush so refined it felt curated, like an exhibit in itself. White walls rose clean and uninterrupted, broken only by carefully spaced sculptures and canvases bathed in soft, intentional light. Classical music drifted through hidden speakers, each note floating delicately in the air, mingling with the faint scent of polish and old money. Every sound was magnified in the stillness, the subtle brush of fabric, the quiet intake of breath, and most prominently, the sharp, confident clicks of heels striking the marble floor. Sophia moved backward in careful increments, her phone raised, eyes narrowed in concentration, oblivious to how close the edge of disaster truly was. Just a little further back to get the angle, time seemed to stretch thin as she took that final step. Her heel met resistance, an almost imperceptible wobble beneath her weight. In the fraction of a second before gravity claimed the moment, the gallery held its breath. Then the world fractured. The sound that followed was not a simple break, but an explosion, deep, violent, final. Glass screamed as it shattered, thousands of razor-bright fragments bursting outward like a frozen wave released. The classical music cut off mid-phrase, strangled by the impact, leaving behind a vacuum of stunned silence that pressed against every ear. Oh God, oh no. Her gasp seemed obscenely loud in the aftermath, echoing off the walls as her eyes locked onto the ruin at her feet. What moments ago had been a towering, luminous sculpture was now a constellation of shards scattered across the floor, catching the lights in cruel, glittering fragments. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint settling of glass dust. It was the kind of quiet that followed catastrophe, where reality struggled to reassert itself.
You idiot. Do you know what that was? That was the Tear of Venice. It is worth $200,000. Security. Call the police.
The gallery owner's voice sliced through the stillness, raw with fury and panic. His face flushed crimson as he gestured wildly toward the debris, as if the sheer force of his anger might reverse time. The name of the piece seemed to hover in the air, heavy with prestige and loss, while staff members froze in place, unsure whether to rush forward or retreat. The word police landed like a gavel strike, final and damning.
Stop.
The single word descended from above, resonant and commanding, carrying with it an authority that did not ask to be questioned. Heads turned as one toward the balcony, where a massive silhouette detached itself from the shadows. The man standing there seemed carved rather than born, his presence bending the space around him. When he began to move, his footsteps rang out against the metal stairs, slow, deliberate clomps that echoed like a countdown.
Do not call the police. They will just trample the shards. You. Look at me.
He approached Sophia with unhurried purpose, each step measured, as though he were navigating sacred ground. Up close, he was enormous, his black t-shirt dusted with fine glass powder that glittered faintly under the lights. He stopped just short of her, forcing her gaze upward. The command in his voice left no room for refusal, and she felt her body obey before her mind could catch up. I am so sorry. I cannot pay for it. I am a student. Her words spilled out in a rush, thin and fragile, her hands trembling at her sides. Fear coiled tight in her chest, squeezing each breath smaller than the last. She waited for his anger, for condemnation, for the inevitable collapse of everything she thought was stable in her life.
It shattered cleanly. That means the annealing process was perfect. You are shaking. Are you cut?
Instead of yelling, he crouched with surprising grace for someone his size, selecting a shard from the floor as though it were a precious gem. He examined the break with an intensity bordering on reverence, turning it so the light refracted through its edges. When he looked up at her, his gaze was sharp but not unkind, analytical rather than accusatory, as if she were another variable in an equation he was solving. I do not think so. Just my pride. The attempt at humor was weak, but it was all she had. Her knees threatened to give out, adrenaline draining from her system and leaving behind a hollow ache. Around them, no one moved. The gallery felt suspended between two possible futures, neither yet chosen.
You destroyed my work, but you also revealed a flaw in the display stand. It was wobbly. I hate imperfect things. So in a way, you did me a favor.
He rose to his full height, towering once more, dusting his hands together as though closing a chapter. His words landed with unsettling calm, reframing the disaster into something almost deliberate. The notion that this ruin could be considered a favor sent a ripple of confusion through the room, unsettling everyone who listened.
Mr. Vance, surely you want to press charges?
The owner's tone shifted, cautious now, deferential. This was no longer his decision alone, and he knew it. All eyes returned to the sculptor, waiting for judgment.
No, I need an assistant. My last one quit because of the heat. You owe me $200,000. My studio is on Black Rock Island. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. You work until the debt is paid.
The sentence unfolded like a contract spoken into existence, each line sealing itself before the last had fully settled. Black Rock Island sounded distant and ominous, a place apart from ordinary life. The offer, if it could be called that, hung heavy with implication, reshaping Sophia's future in a matter of seconds. Work? Doing what? Her voice was small, uncertain, grasping for clarity in a situation that had spiraled beyond comprehension. The gallery, the city, her old plans all felt suddenly far away.
Sweeping, carrying, and breathing. I need fresh lungs. Do you accept, or do you prefer jail?
A faint, humorless edge threaded through his words, though his expression remained unreadable. The choice was no choice at all, presented with brutal simplicity. The future narrowed to two paths, both frightening, one irreversible. I accept. The hot shop announced itself long before Sophia fully crossed the threshold. The air trembled with a continuous, violent roar, a sound so deep and unrelenting it felt less like noise and more like pressure, as if an enormous mechanical beast were breathing somewhere in the walls. Heat radiated outward in thick, invisible waves, wrapping around her body, crawling across her skin, invading her lungs. Fire crackled constantly, a chaotic chorus of sparks and combustion, and every breath tasted dry, metallic, and scorched. When she stepped inside, the heat struck her like a physical blow, forcing a cough from deep in her chest as her eyes watered instantly while her body struggled to adjust. It is so hot in here, like an oven. Dorian stood already acclimated to the inferno, his posture relaxed in a way that felt almost unnatural given the environment. Sweat gleamed on his skin, catching the furnace light, while the cavernous room glowed in shades of orange and gold. The furnaces loomed like open mouths, their interiors alive with liquid fire, and the floor itself seemed to radiate stored heat from years of relentless use.
It is 110 degrees in the room, 2,000 degrees in the furnace. This is the hot shop. Take off your coat. Take off your sweater. You will faint if you wear that.
Sophia's fingers fumbled with her clothing, movements sluggish under the oppressive heat. Fabric peeled away from her skin reluctantly, already damp with sweat, each layer removed, bringing only marginal relief. The heat did not recede. It simply found her more directly, licking at her arms, her neck, and her face as if curious about her presence. What do I do? Dorian's voice cut cleanly through the roar, practiced and precise. He moved with the calm authority of someone who had surrendered long ago to this environment and learned to command it instead. Nearby, tools lay arranged with ritualistic care, metal pipes, shears, and paddles, each bearing scars of fire and time.
Stand there, drink water, and watch. I am making a chandelier piece.
He stepped toward the furnace and pulled the heavy door open. Instantly, the sound swelled into a deafening roar as if the room itself were screaming. Light exploded outward, so bright it bordered on painful, and the heat surged forward in a violent wave. The interior of the furnace churned like a sun trapped behind steel, molten glass glowing white-hot within.
I need to gather the glass.
He inserted the long metal blowpipe into the furnace, rotating it steadily. The pipe hummed faintly as it turned, metal against metal, while viscous molten glass clung to its end. The motion was hypnotic and deliberate, a balance between force and finesse. The glass moved like thick honey, stretching and folding, threatening to drip, if not constantly coaxed into obedience.
It is heavy. Molten glass is like honey on a spoon. You have to keep turning it. If you stop turning, it drops. Gravity is the enemy.
Sophia watched, transfixed. Her earlier discomfort faded into the background as her attention narrowed to Dorian and the glowing mass at the end of the pipe. In her mind, he transformed into something elemental, a blacksmith god forged in fire and sweat, muscles tightening and releasing with controlled power. Sweat traced slow paths down his neck and spine, catching the furnace light like molten lines, and the sheer physicality of the act stirred something deep and wordless within her.
Stop staring. Come here. I need you to open the glory hole doors when I signal. Ready?
The command snapped her back into the room. She stepped closer, heart hammering as the heat intensified with every inch she advanced. The glory hole doors stood before her, thick metal barriers containing unimaginable temperatures, and even closed, they radiated a fierce warmth that made her skin prickle. Ready?
Now.
Sophia heaved the metal doors open. The blast of heat was immediate and brutal, a wall of fire that slammed into her face and chest. Air seemed to vanish from her lungs, replaced by searing pressure, and the light inside was blinding, a concentrated inferno that felt alive. It burns my face. Dorian's voice cut through her panic, sharp and unyielding. He did not look away from the glass, his focus absolute, trusting her to hold her ground despite every instinct screaming retreat.
Do not turn away. Face the fire. If you fear the heat, the glass will sense it. Close the doors.
She slammed the doors shut, metal ringing against metal with a resounding clang as the inferno was sealed back inside. The sudden reduction in heat felt like mercy, though the room still pulsed with oppressive warmth. Dorian leaned forward slightly, breath heavy as the moment settled.
Good, you did not run. Most people run the first time.
The workbench hummed with quiet industry as the glass rolled beneath practiced hands. Heat shimmered in the air, bending the light and carrying the mineral tang of molten silica and old smoke. The bench bore scars of countless hours, scorched rings, chalk marks, and flecks of cooled glass. The rolling sound became a steady, hypnotic pulse that synced breath to motion as the glowing form turned, alive and fragile, waiting for air to give it shape.
I need air. My lungs are tired today. The smoke gets to me. Sophia, come here.
Me? He did not look away from the bench when he called her name. The furnace exhaled behind him with a low roar like an animal at rest, and the red-orange glow at the pipe's far end throbbed with contained heat. The space felt intimate despite its size, as if the walls leaned in to listen and the air itself understood it was about to be shared.
Take the end of the pipe, the mouthpiece.
He lifted the long metal pipe, cool near his grip, and infernal at the opposite end where the glass burned like a small sun. Blackened steel led to liquid light as he offered the mouthpiece with deliberate slowness, making the gesture instructional and almost ceremonial.
I will shape the glass. You will blow, gently, like you are blowing out a candle but sustaining it.
Okay. Nervousness tightened her shoulders and crept into her breath. She stepped closer, feeling warmth before confidence, and sensing the distance between instruction and execution as the pipe hovered between them, a narrow bridge demanding trust and precision.
Put your mouth on the pipe.
She leaned in and set her lips against the metal. It was cooler than expected, with a faint taste of iron and ash, a simple point where her body met the work and breath would become form.
Wait,
He paused her with a raised finger and reached forward, wiping the mouthpiece clean with a rough, economical motion. His calloused thumb moved gently, as if clearing a lens before looking through it.
Now, blow.
She exhaled into the pipe, and a controlled rush carried her effort forward. The air pressed into the molten glass as the bench seemed to hold its breath, and the form swelled subtly under invisible pressure.
Harder. Push the air from your diaphragm. Yes.
He watched the glass closely, tracking its expansion with a craftsman's focus. The glowing mass softened and grew as time stretched thin, measured in temperature and restraint.
Stop.
He sealed the pipe with his thumb, trapping the breath inside with a swift, decisive motion. The glass held, suspended between collapse and completion, balanced by shared timing.
Perfect. You have strong lungs. Swimmer?
Yes. How did you know? Her chest rose and fell as she recovered, lightheaded and alert, with a thrill at realizing her body had translated instruction into result.
The rhythm of your breath, it is controlled.
He glanced at the mouthpiece again and noticed the trace she had left behind, a human mark against dull metal that signaled presence rather than mistake.
You left lipstick on my pipe.
I am sorry. I will wipe it.
No, leave it. It marks the connection. For the next hour, Sophia, we share the same breath. We are one organism. My hands, your air.
The words settled into the room and reshaped the space between them. Breath became currency, and collaboration became intimacy, as the furnace roared softly and the glass waited, patient and receptive.
Ready to go again?
Yes, break time arrived, not with silence, but with a heavy, breathing pause in the rhythm of labor. The furnace did not sleep. It hummed continuously, a deep mechanical sound layered with the faint crackle of heat working through metal and glass. The air in the studio was thick, saturated with warmth and particles of dust that clung to skin. Time seemed to slow here, bending under the temperature, as if even minutes needed rest. Dorian lifted the bucket without ceremony and tipped it over his own head. Water crashed down over his hair and shoulders, a sudden violent contrast to the relentless heat. It splashed against the concrete floor, scattering in bright arcs before being swallowed by steam. Droplets traced his spine, soaking his shirt and darkening the fabric as the water fought briefly against evaporation.
God, the heat today is brutal.
Sophia watched him, unmoving. Her eyes followed the way the water clung to him, the way his body reacted instinctively with a sharp inhale and a shake of the head as droplets flew free. The light from the furnace caught in the falling water, turning it briefly into sparks before it vanished. You're soaked. Dorian crossed the small distance between them, his boots scraping softly against the floor. Each step brought the heat with him, radiating outward. He stopped close enough that Sophia could feel it and sense the shift in air and the presence of another body in such a confined space.
And you are dehydrated. Your lips are dry. Here, drink.
He pressed a bottle into her hand, cool plastic stark against her overheated skin. The condensation left a faint wetness on her palm, a tactile reminder of water she had forgotten to drink. The studio smelled of heat and metal and something faintly sweet, the residue of melted materials. I'm fine. Dorian took the bottle back before she could protest further. His movements were precise and controlled, shaped by habit and responsibility rather than impatience. The authority in the gesture was quiet but absolute.
Open your mouth. In this room, I am responsible for your body. If you collapse, you fall on hot glass. Drink.
He raised the bottle to her lips. The plastic touched her mouth, and she complied, taking a swallow and then another. Water escaped, trailing down her chin in a thin line before dropping away and leaving her skin glistening. The act felt both practical and intimate, stripped of pretense.
Wasteful.
He reached out without hesitation. His thumb brushed along her chin, collecting the stray water. The touch was brief but deliberate, his skin roughened by work and warm from the furnace. The gesture lingered longer than necessary, transforming care into something quieter and more charged.
Your skin is hot, flushed. You look good in the firelight, Sophia. Better than you looked in that sterile gallery.
The firelight danced across her features, exaggerating shadows and warming every line. In this glow, imperfections softened, and the boundary between labor and art blurred. The studio itself seemed to lean closer, enclosing them. I feel messy. My hair is frizzy. I'm sweating. She became suddenly aware of herself, of damp strands clinging to her neck and of fabric sticking to skin. The awareness felt amplified under his gaze, as though the heat had stripped away layers of distance she usually relied on.
Sweat is honest. It means you are alive. I like the smell of sweat. It smells like effort. And you smell sweet, like burnt sugar.
He leaned closer as he spoke, close enough that his words seemed to land directly on her skin. The scent of heat, water, and something indefinable surrounded them, thick and inescapable. His voice lowered, not in volume, but in intimacy. Dorian, you're too close. The space between them was nearly gone. The studio felt smaller than before, the walls pressing inward and the furnace a watchful presence behind them.
The studio is small, and I don't see well. My eyes are failing. Cataracts from the infrared radiation. I need to be close to see you clearly. May I look at you?
He tapped his temple lightly as he spoke, the gesture casual yet revealing. The admission carried weight, vulnerability folded into explanation. His closeness was framed as necessity, but the effect was unmistakable. Yes, he studied her face from inches away, slowly, as though committing every detail to memory. The heat painted her features in amber and gold, softened edges, and deepened shadows. His attention was total and unbroken.
Beautiful. If I could sculpt you in glass, I would. But glass is too hard. You are soft.
Dorian sat at the workbench as if it were an altar, the studio dim except for the furnace's orange pulse. The glass on the pipe spun continuously, a molten sun held in balance by practiced wrists. Heat breathed through the room in waves, carrying the mineral tang of silica and metal. Every surface hummed faintly, tools resting like attentive witnesses. Time felt stretched, elastic, pulled thin by the rotation of the glowing form.
To shape the hot glass, we use wet newspaper. It creates a layer of steam, a cushion. Put your hand out.
Sophia hesitated, the air between them alive with heat and instruction. The bench creaked softly as she shifted closer, eyes fixed on the incandescent shape. The newspaper lay soaked and heavy, ink bleeding into gray rivulets that darkened her fingers. Steam curled upward in ghostly threads, promising protection while threatening pain. The moment asked for trust, not theory. Won't it burn me? Dorian's voice carried the calm of repetition, earned through countless near misses and learned instincts. He knew the boundary where danger softened into control, where fear could be guided rather than denied. The furnace exhaled again, as if punctuating his certainty.
Not if the paper's wet enough, trust me.
He placed a thick pad of sodden newspaper into her waiting palm, its weight surprising, its chill momentary before the heat claimed it. Ink smeared across her skin like a ritual mark. His fingers adjusted her grip with economical precision, teaching through touch what words could not fully convey.
Now, cup the glass. As I turn it, you mold it.
The instant the wet paper met the glass, the studio answered. A sharp sizzle erupted, followed by an urgent hiss as steam burst outward, cloaking their hands in white breath. The sound was intimate and alive, like rain striking hot stone. Moisture flashed into vapor, forming that promised cushion, fragile, fleeting, essential. I can feel the heat, but it's not burning. It's vibrating. Dorian's hands came over hers, steady and encompassing, guiding the pressure with subtle shifts. The vibration traveled through bone and nerve, a living pulse responding to their insistence. The glass resisted, then yielded, then resisted again, negotiating every fraction of force. He leaned his chest against her back, an anchor and a directive, aligning breath with motion.
Squeeze gently. Feel the resistance? It wants to be a sphere. We are forcing it to be a vase. We are imposing our will on the element. Push. Harder.
The molten form began to answer, its surface tightening as cooling crept in from the edges. Seconds narrowed, the steam thinned. The studio seemed to hold its breath alongside them, tools silent, furnace roaring like a distant tide. Control became urgency. Urgency sharpened into resolve. It's getting stiff. Dorian felt the change too. The window closing. He lowered his voice, breath brushing her ear, compressing time into instruction. Letting go now would undo everything. A single lapse collapsing intention into distortion.
It's cooling. We have seconds left. Don't let go. If you let go, it warps. Stay with me.
I'm staying. With a controlled exhale, Dorian ended the negotiation. The shape was set enough to survive its own weight. He guided the piece away, the pipe lifting as the glass left her hands, trailing the last whispers of steam. He placed it into the annealer, a glowing mouth that promised slow forgiveness.
Done. Into the annealer. Look at your hand.
Sophia stared at her palm, ink-stained and damp, trembling despite the absence of pain. The shaking carried the echo of heat, the afterimage of risk met and mastered. Her pulse thudded loudly in her ears, louder than the furnace now. It's shaking. Dorian took her hand with an ease that acknowledged the moment without breaking it. He pressed his lips to her palm, a brief, grounding contact that sealed the experience. The studio felt changed, or perhaps it was only her.
Adrenaline. You shaped fire with your bare hands today. You are not a student anymore. You are a maker.
The storm did not arrive politely. It assaulted the island with a roar that felt personal. Waves hurled themselves against the black rock shoreline, exploding into white violence that rattled the foundations of the glass studio. Rain hammered the corrugated metal roof in frantic bursts, each drop amplified into a metallic drumbeat. Wind shoved at the walls as if trying to peel the building open, while the ocean's breath surged and retreated, a vast animal pacing just beyond the light. Inside, the electricity wavered like a nervous pulse. The lights flickered, dimming and flaring in uneven breaths, throwing shadows that stretched and collapsed across furnaces and work tables. Heat lingered thick in the air, trapped and heavy, carrying the mineral tang of molten glass and sweat. Each flicker threatened darkness, and with it, the terrifying possibility that the fans would fall silent and the studio would become an oven.
The power is unstable. If the fans die, the studio will overheat. We need to open the vents. Help me.
They moved together toward the sealing mechanisms, boots slipping slightly on the damp concrete. Heavy metal chains hung cold and unforgiving, their weight resisting every pull. Muscles strained as they cranked, the links grinding and screaming in protest. Thunder cracked overhead, close enough to feel in the chest, and when the vents finally began to open, rain burst inward, blown sideways by the wind, colliding with the furnace heat in a violent cloud of steam. The sudden mingling of elements turned the studio into a liminal space, fire and water locked in combat. Rain streaked across glowing surfaces, hissed as it vanished, and soaked skin and clothes alike. Heat rolled out in waves from the furnace, wrapping around them even as the storm tried to claim the room. The air shimmered, thick with moisture, breath visible in the flashing light. Dorian stood back from the furnace, his shirt discarded sometime during the chaos. His skin glistened with rain and sweat, scars catching the light like pale seams in stone. He drew a deep breath. The danger narrowly passed and turned toward Sophia, his expression a fragile balance of relief and concern.
That was close. Are you okay?
Sophia wiped rain from her face, water dripping from her hair and sleeves. Her clothes clung to her skin, heavy and uncomfortable, the heat making it impossible to tell where rain ended and sweat began. Fatigue pressed into her shoulders, yet her eyes stayed bright, fixed on him and the fire behind him. "I'm soaked and hot and tired." Dorian followed her gaze downward despite himself, noticing the way the wet fabric outlined her, the intimacy of the moment sharpening in the charged air. He looked away quickly, jaw tightening, the storm outside echoing the one gathering in his chest. Responsibility and desire collided, and responsibility spoke first.
You should go to the main house, shower, sleep.
Sophia did not move. The thunder rolled again, closer, and instinctively she leaned toward the warmth of the furnace and the solidity of him. The fire painted her face in amber light, and the idea of walking alone through the storm felt unbearable, the dark paths between buildings suddenly monstrous. "I don't want to go. The storm is scary. I want to stay here with the fire and you." Dorian closed his eyes for a brief, painful second. When he opened them, years weighed in his posture, the isolation of the island, the injuries etched into his body, the choices that had hardened him. He faced her fully now, voice rough, laying out truth like a warning sign. He hoped she would obey.
Sophia, I am a 54-year-old man living on a rock. I have burns on my arms and glass in my lungs. You are 22. You are perfect. Don't stay here. If you stay, I will melt.
Her answer came without hesitation. She stepped closer, rain still dripping from her hair, the furnace heat blooming between them. In her eyes was not naivete, but resolve, a quiet certainty that transformation required risk, that nothing strong remained unchanged by fire. Then melt. Glass has to melt to become something new, right? A low sound escaped Dorian, half laugh, half surrender. He dragged a hand down his face, feeling the tremor in his own resolve. The storm raged on, but inside the studio, something else gave way, an acceptance edged with fear.
You use my own logic against me. Fine. Stay, but come away from the furnace. It is too hot.
The living quarters were wrapped in a deliberate quiet, the kind that felt cultivated rather than accidental. The hum of distant systems faded into the background, leaving only the soft, domestic intimacy of the space. When the refrigerator opened, a breath of cold air spilled into the room, carrying with it the faint scent of metal and condensation. The sound was small and ordinary, yet it cut through the silence with precision, as if announcing the beginning of something careful and controlled. Dorian's movements were unhurried as he reached inside, his fingers closing around the ice. The chill bit into his skin immediately, a sharp contrast to the warmth lingering in the room. He held it for a moment, gauging its temperature, already thinking several steps ahead. This was not a casual gesture. It was intentional and almost ritualistic, as though the simple act of retrieving ice carried a deeper purpose he alone fully understood.
You are overheated. Your face is red. Sit.
He wrapped the ice in a cloth with practiced care, folding the fabric until only the controlled cold remained, tamed and purposeful. The cloth dampened the bite, but did not erase it, transforming raw cold into something precise. His hands moved close to her without touching yet, the pause itself charged, allowing anticipation to gather and thicken in the air between them.
I need to cool your pulse points.
When the ice finally met her neck, it was not abrupt, but inevitable. He placed it just below her jaw, where her pulse betrayed her, steady and alive. The cold radiated outward, seeping into skin and muscle, sending a clear signal through her body. His attention narrowed to that single point of contact, watching and listening for the subtle changes beneath his touch. Ah, that is cold. The shiver that passed through her was immediate and unfiltered, traveling from her neck down her spine. Her breath caught and then escaped in a soft exhale, betraying both surprise and something dangerously close to delight. The room seemed to contract around them, every other sensation dulled by the intensity of that single cold point against her skin.
Cold is good. It shocks the system.
He guided the ice downward, tracing the line of her collarbone with deliberate slowness. Each inch was mapped carefully, as though he were studying how her body translated sensation into response. The contrast between the cold cloth and the warmth beneath it became more pronounced. A quiet dialogue written directly onto her skin.
Contrast, hot glass, cold water. That is how we temper steel. That is how we temper us.
His words lingered, heavy with implication. The metaphor was not abstract. It was being demonstrated in real time. Heat, cold, pressure, and restraint were each applied with intention. The space between them felt charged, as if every breath and movement were part of a careful experiment balanced on the edge between control and surrender. Is that what we are doing? Tempering. Her question carried more than curiosity. Beneath it was vulnerability and a quiet acknowledgement of risk. She searched his face for an answer and for reassurance that this process, whatever it truly was, would not leave her fractured. The cold continued its path, unrelenting, as if waiting for his response before moving any further.
I am trying to keep you from shattering.
He traced the ice down her arm, following the sensitive inner line where the skin was thinner and more honest. Goosebumps rose instantly, a visible testament to how deeply her body listened to him. He watched the reaction with focused intensity, not triumph, but fascination, as though her responsiveness revealed something rare and fragile.
Your skin responds instantly. Goosebumps. You are so responsive, Sophia, like molten glass. If I touch you, you move.
Each word settled into her, reshaping the moment. The comparison was intimate and dangerous. Molten glass was beautiful and luminous, but it required careful handling. One wrong move, and it could collapse or harden too fast. His awareness of that risk made his restraint feel deliberate and almost reverent. Touch me then, without the ice. The request hung in the air, simple and direct. It shifted the balance instantly, turning the careful experiment into something raw. The ice slipped from his fingers and struck the floor, the sharp clatter echoing louder than it should have, a punctuation mark signaling the end of restraint. His hands, warm and rough, replaced the cold as they came up to cup her face. The heat of his palms was unmistakable and grounding after the prolonged chill. With thumbs near her jaw and fingers spread along her cheeks, he held her as if anchoring her to the present moment.
God help me.
A full week had passed, measured not by calendars, but by tides and cooling glass. The island woke to the low, patient churn of the sea as a boat cut through the morning mist, its engine coughing softly before falling silent near the dock. Salt hung heavy in the air, clinging to stone and skin alike. When the boat finally kissed the wood, its arrival felt invasive, like a sharp knock on a door that was never meant to be opened. The visitor stepped onto the island with polished shoes and sharper opinions, bringing the outside world with him.
Dorian, I heard you were hiding away. And who is this? The help?
Julian's gaze slid immediately past Dorian and landed on Sophia, not with curiosity, but with the practiced assessment of a man used to judging objects. His eyes lingered, traveling from the soot-dusted hem of her clothes to the quiet steadiness in her posture. There was a curl of disdain at the corner of his mouth, a subtle smirk sharpened by privilege. In his world, beauty was something to be appraised, categorized, and owned, and anything bearing the marks of labor was automatically diminished.
Cute, but a bit dusty.
The temperature in the workshop shifted, as if the furnace itself had sensed the insult. Dorian did not move at first, but something in him hardened, the way molten glass stiffens when it meets colder air. His shoulders squared, and when he finally turned his head, the easy warmth he usually carried was gone. What remained was dense and immovable, a presence that filled the space between them like solid stone.
Julian, do not speak to her. Oh, come on. I am here for the commission. The royal chandelier. Is it ready, or are you too busy playing house with the intern?
The words echoed against the stone walls, brittle and loud. Dorian's hand drifted downward, fingers closing around the familiar weight of an iron blowpipe resting nearby. As he lifted it, the metal dragged across the floor with a long, grating scrape, a sound that clawed at the nerves and silenced the room. It was not a threat made in haste, but a deliberate motion, slow enough for everyone present to understand exactly what it meant.
The chandelier is done, but the price has gone up. We had a contract.
Julian's confidence wavered, just slightly, as the reality of the space asserted itself. This was not a gallery or a boardroom where signatures and titles held power. This was an island shaped by fire and patience, ruled by the hands that made beauty from danger. The silence stretched, filled with the faint ticking of cooling glass and the distant crash of waves far below the cliffs.
The price for the glass is the same. The price for insulting my partner is double. Sophia is not the help. She is the breath inside the glass. Without her, this piece does not exist. Apologize to her, or I will throw this chandelier into the ocean right now.
Dorian's voice remained level, but each word landed with precision, like a measured strike. He turned slightly, revealing the chandelier nearby, an intricate constellation of fragile light, every curve and filament born from shared effort and unspoken understanding. His grip tightened as he lifted it, holding the masterpiece suspended over unforgiving stone. The danger was unmistakable. One slip, one choice, and months of brilliance would shatter beyond repair.
You are bluffing.
For the first time, fear cracked through Julian's polished exterior. His breath caught as Dorian adjusted his stance, muscles engaged, the chandelier trembling ever so slightly in his hands. This was not performative anger. It was history speaking. The kind of man who could create such beauty was also capable of destroying it, and the knowledge settled heavily in Julian's chest.
Try me. I have broken beautiful things before. Okay, I apologize. I am sorry, Miv.
The apology came out rushed and thin, stripped of arrogance. Only then did Dorian lower the chandelier, guiding it down with reverent care until it rested safely once more. The tension drained from the room in slow degrees, like heat bleeding from glass as it cools. Dorian's hands lingered a moment longer than necessary, ensuring the piece was unharmed before he finally stepped back.
Good, now take it and get off my island.
Night wrapped the workshop in a heavy, breathing darkness, broken only by the low hum of dying lamps and the faint glow of cooling furnaces. Dorian had been working for hours, guided by habit and muscle memory more than sight, when the world betrayed him. His foot caught on something unseen, and in an instant, his balance vanished. Metal tools slipped from the workbench and struck the stone floor, their noise echoing violently through the workshop like a sudden storm. He collapsed among his scattered instruments, the cold floor seeping through his clothes as the air smelled of iron, ash, and unfinished glass. Fear bloomed in the silence after the crash, quiet at first and then overwhelming, as his heart hammered with the dread that something far worse than bruises had occurred. Dorian. Sophia's voice cut through the darkness as she rushed toward him and stopped short at the sight of him on the floor, curled inward with one hand pressed hard against his eyes. The image sent a chill through her, a premonition that the fall had uncovered something far more devastating than a simple accident.
It's gone. The center vision. It's just a blur. I cannot see the heat color. I cannot see the glass. It's over. I'm finished.
The words spilled out of him in fragments, as broken as the images in his mind, and defeat settled heavily on his shoulders. No, you're not. Sophia knelt beside him with unwavering certainty, leaning closer and grounding herself in the sound of his breathing as she refused to let him disappear into despair.
I cannot sculpt if I cannot see.
The protest rose raw and unfiltered, the cry of someone whose identity was inseparable from his craft, leaving his hands trembling uselessly in his lap. "You said your hands see better than your eyes, and you have my eyes. I will guide you. I will tell you the color and the shape. We do it together." Her words were deliberate and intimate, offering not sympathy, but partnership, and replacing loss with the promise of shared creation.
You would be my eyes?
Hope and disbelief tangled on his face as he listened, the possibility stirring that his art and his life were not finished, after all. "I will be your eyes, your hands, your breath. Stand up, Dorian, we have one more piece to make." Sophia reached for him and urged him to stand, and among the fallen tools and cooling glass, a new way of seeing began to take shape, forged not in sight, but in trust. The furnace did not merely roar. It dominated the space like a living creature, its open mouth spilling white, hot light into the workshop. Waves of heat rolled outward, pressing against skin and breath, while intense rhythmic music pulsed through the air, syncing with the crackle of fire. Every surface shimmered and every shadow danced. Within the inferno, Sophia and Dorian moved as if bound by an invisible thread, their bodies aligned in perfect synchronization, turning labor into ritual. "Color is cherry red. It is ready. Gather now." Sophia's voice cut through the noise with precision and trust. Her eyes tracked the molten glass at the end of the pipe, reading the story told by its glow. Cherry red meant a fleeting moment, and she relied on instinct honed by years beside the furnace.
I have it. To the bench.
Though his eyes were useless against the glare, Dorian moved with absolute confidence. Memory guided his hands as the pipe rotated smoothly between his palms, each step toward the bench deliberate and assured. "Left a bit. Okay, down, roll. Faster. Now shears. Cut the neck." Sophia circled him, her commands economical and exact. The glass met the bench and rolled under controlled pressure. When the shears closed around the glowing neck, the moment felt suspended in time. The snip rang out like a crystalline note, and the glass answered with a delicate song that vibrated through the workshop before being swallowed by the furnace.
I can feel it. It is balance. Blow, Sophia. Give it life.
Dorian's hands trembled with awareness as he held the pipe steady. Weight and symmetry spoke to him through touch, and he offered the piece forward with complete trust. Sophia leaned in and blew into the pipe with controlled breath as Dorian pressed wet paper to the surface. Steam hissed, and the glass swelled outward, responding to air and pressure with patient obedience.
More. Expand it. It is growing. It feels like a heart. A glass heart.
With each breath, the form grew more defined, rounding and pulsing with the illusion of life. Sweat ran down Dorian's face, but his focus never wavered as the heart took shape. "It is beautiful, Dorian. It is flawless." Sophia's voice softened as awe slipped through her calm. She saw harmony and shared instinct, the culmination of countless hours captured in heat and form.
It is us, fire and breath, into the annular.
Sweat soaked and smiling, Dorian guided the finished piece toward the annealer. As the door closed and the furnace faded, a quiet certainty remained that something rare had been made, a testament to collaboration sealed in glass. The gallery existed in a state of hushed reverence, as if every visitor had unconsciously agreed to lower their heartbeat upon entering. Footsteps softened against the polished floor, whispers dissolved into breath, and even the air seemed to hold itself still. Light spilled from carefully angled fixtures, not harsh or demanding, but devotional, illuminating white walls that waited patiently to serve as witnesses. The atmosphere was not loud with admiration. It was dense with it, thickened by curiosity, awe, and the unspoken sense that something fragile and intimate was being shared. At the center of the room stood the sculpture, a glass heart, suspended as if between moments, neither fully alive nor entirely inanimate. It glowed from within, a soft internal luminescence that pulsed faintly, mimicking the rhythm of breath rather than a mechanical beat. The glass was impossibly thin, veined with subtle imperfections that caught the light like memories trapped beneath the surface. Viewers leaned in despite themselves, drawn by the illusion that the heart might fog, warm, or crack if watched too closely. Mr. Vance, this piece, the breath, it is unlike anything you have done. It feels so alive. What was your inspiration? The reporter's voice cut gently through the stillness, professional yet tinged with genuine wonder. A microphone hovered between artist and artwork, an almost comical attempt to capture something that clearly resisted reduction. Around them, a small semicircle formed. Critics, patrons, strangers, each person quietly recalibrating their expectations of art, of process, of intimacy. Cameras waited, lenses blinking, ready to freeze the moment into something more manageable, something that could be archived and explained.
Inspiration is a cheap word.
Dorian Vance stood slightly apart from the crowd, his posture composed but careful. Dark glasses shielded his eyes, not as an affectation, but as a necessity. A thin barrier between him and a world that was beginning to blur at the edges. One hand rested firmly, almost reverently, on Sophia's arm. His fingers curled not in possession, but in orientation, as though her presence anchored him in space. His stillness suggested discipline. His grip suggested trust.
This piece is a collaboration. It was made by two people breathing as one.
The words settled into the room slowly, expanding beyond their simplicity. Collaboration implied surrender, timing, vulnerability. Breathing as one suggested intimacy that surpassed technique, something lived rather than designed. A few listeners exchanged glances, recalculating what they thought they understood about authorship. The glass heart seemed to glow a fraction brighter, as if responding to the acknowledgement, its internal light trembling with a human-like hesitation. Dorian turned his head toward Sophia, the movement deliberate and careful, guided more by instinct than sight. The shift revealed the quiet choreography between them, how she adjusted her stance, how she anticipated his balance, how their shared space closed seamlessly. This was not assistance performed for an audience. It was habit, practiced in private, now accidentally exposed under gallery lights.
I may be losing my sight.
The admission landed without drama, stripped of self-pity, yet heavy with consequence. It reframed everything: the glasses, the touch, the reliance on sound and presence. In that moment, the sculpture no longer felt like an abstract marvel, but like a record of adaptation, of an artist learning to see differently. The crowd held its breath, instinctively mirroring the theme of the work, as if silence itself were a form of respect.
But she gave me a vision.
His voice softened on the final words, trailing into something more personal than a statement for the press. Sophia did not speak, but her stillness was eloquent, her quiet support louder than applause. The glass heart continued its gentle glow, no longer just an object, but a testament to shared breath, to borrowed sight, to the idea that vision does not always belong to the eyes, and that art can be born where dependence and devotion quietly meet. The island received them back as if it had been holding its breath. Waves rolled in with a patient, unhurried rhythm, folding themselves onto the shore and retreating again, leaving the air salted and clean. Quiet settled not as emptiness, but as presence, a soft blanket drawn over the evening. The sky dimmed toward amber and blue, and the world felt pared down to essentials: water, wood, wind, and the steady endurance of a place that had witnessed their beginning and now waited for their ending. They sat side by side on the porch, the boards warm beneath them from a day of sun. The house behind them exhaled gently, old timber creaking as it cooled. Dorian's posture was still and attentive, as if listening to more than the sea. Sophia leaned close enough that their shoulders brushed, a small, deliberate contact that carried the weight of weeks and months. In that narrow space between them lived memory, risk, and a future not yet named. "The debt is paid, Dorian. The sculpture sold for $1 million. I am free to go." Her words hung in the air, precise and calm, yet threaded with an unspoken tremor. Freedom, once abstract, now had edges sharp enough to cut. The sea answered with a long sigh, and the horizon held its line, indifferent and vast. Sophia kept her gaze forward, as if testing whether the distance would call to her by name. Dorian turned toward her, his movement careful and reverent. He reached out and took her hand, not to anchor her, but to be known. His fingers closed around hers with a warmth that spoke of intention rather than possession, a quiet plea delivered through touch.
Are you going?
The question was simple, yet it carried the fragile architecture of his world. In it lived the furnace's glow, the hours of work, and the fear of cold returning. He did not look away. He let the moment see him fully. "Do you want me to?" She turned at last, searching his face for truth without ornament. The porch light caught the curve of her cheek and the resolve in her eyes. This was not a test, but an invitation, an opening wide enough for honesty to walk through unarmed.
If you leave, the fire goes out. I will freeze. Stay. Be my partner. Be my eyes. Be my wife.
He spoke as if assembling a life from bare elements, each sentence a beam set carefully into place. The fire he named was more than heat. It was purpose, motion, and survival. To freeze was not merely to be cold, but to be alone again. His voice did not rise. It steadied, finding courage in clarity and offering himself without spectacle. Sophia leaned in, closing the last inch between them. Her kiss was gentle and decisive, a promise pressed into a moment. It tasted of salt and warmth, of endings chosen and beginnings claimed. "I am not going anywhere. I like playing with fire." The sea seemed to brighten at her answer, as if the horizon itself approved. The risk she named was not recklessness, but commitment, the willingness to tend a flame, to respect it, and to stand close enough to feel its truth.
Good, because I plan to keep you warm for the rest of my life.
The night drew in softly, and the porch light became a small star. Inside the house, the furnace began its low, steady hum, a sound that promised continuity and care. It was warmth made audible, safety translated into vibration. As the sound filled the rooms, it carried with it the future they had chosen, ordinary, enduring, and alive.